So first of all, hello everyone. My name is Dan Sullivan. I am the head of Growth and Partnerships at Cuseum. And first of all, I just want to start by thanking you all for being here today. Hopefully you find yourselves safe and healthy. For those who are unfamiliar, Cuseum, we work with cultural organizations and higher education institutions to help them increase engagement with their alumni using tools like digital alumni cards. It's enough about me. So I'm excited to welcome you all to our first Alumni Hour webinar. So over the past 6 or so months, we've been hosting about 40 webinars on membership and digital engagement in the cultural sector, and we've had over 80,000 viewers. So we realized that with all these challenges higher education and alumni associations are facing, we wanted to be a resource for this community as well that we're serving. So we're super excited that you're here. The COVID-19 pandemic really has disrupted many aspects of alumni relations, of sparking new questions and concerns, as well as opportunities for alumni associations. Since the escalation of the coronavirus, traditional methods of alumni engagement like class reunions and sporting events and tailgates, homecoming, in-person social events, alumni chapter meetups, networking opportunities, those have all kind of gone out the window or been canceled. So in response, alumni associations have been pivoting their digital and virtual strategies to keep their alumni engaged and actively involved. So this webinar is a chance to discuss some of those new challenges, as well as some of the creative ideas and projects that alumni associations have initiated. So I want to encourage all of you to chime in the chat section. If you haven't already, please introduce yourself. Let everybody know which organization you're joining from. It's going to be about 500 of you here today, so feel free to utilize the community as a resource as well. Share as we ask questions to our panelists. Chime in the comments as well. We'd love to hear what you're working on. If you do have a question, please ask it in the Q&A down at the bottom of your screen. And if you see a question that you like, give it that little thumbs up, and it'll drive those up to the top of the page. We're going to get to as many of those questions as we can. Feel free to ask away. By the way, real quick background on me. So I run Growth and Partnerships here at Cuseum, but for 8 years, I was actually the treasurer of the Alumni Council at my alma mater, a mentor for the students there, and I still sit on the board of advisors for the Entrepreneurship Center there. So I'm a little bit involved in this world as well. Okay, let's get started. So we've got an awesome lineup today. First of all, we're joined by Jen Chambers, who's the Assistant Vice President of Lifelong Learning at Duke University Alumni Association. Secondly, we have Veronica Dominguez, the Associate Director of Alumni Engagement at University of Texas San Antonio Alumni Association. And we're joined as well by Serena Bettis, the Coordinator of Alumni and Parent Relations at Southwestern University Alumni. Thank you all for being here. We're going to start off, we're going to go around the room for some quick introductions, quick overview of your role and your organization. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic to Jen. Why don't you get us kicked off?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Jen Chambers. I have been working at Duke now for 6 years on our lifelong learning programming, which really looks at both academic and professional development programming. So we sort of span the gamut of education. The work that we do both sort of creates new opportunities as well as sort of curates things that are being presented by other groups across campus and then sharing that with the alumni. I went to Duke for undergrad. My degree is actually in theater, and did a few other things in between going back to Duke and when I graduated. And then I'm also currently a graduate student at Duke and will graduate with a master's at the end of this year. So we're a bunch of different hats right now, but
amazing.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Thank you for being here. And Serena.
Hi, Serena Bettis. I'm the coordinator for Alumni Parent Relations, like Dan said. I've been working at Southwestern for 3 years now, and my role is working specifically with our local chapters and connection groups. I also help in our department with bridging things with our alumni and students and alumni and faculty. And so really this opportunity that we're in right now has been actually a silver lining in this world that we're in right now. So looking forward to talking a little bit more about what that means. But yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Awesome, thanks for joining. And last but not least, Veronica.
So I am with the University of Texas at San Antonio. Like Jen, I'm actually also a graduate student. I just started this semester, pretty excited to be a real roadrunner. But my role at the association handles all of our forward-facing engagement with our constituents, in addition to sponsorships and business relation partnerships, either in the university or outside of the university. So it's a big territory that includes membership events and all kinds of programming, but it's a lot of fun, and I've been there about 2 years.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. All right. So to get us started off, Veronica, can you talk a little bit about how you've traditionally engaged your alumni at UTSA?
Sure. So like a lot of alumni associations, we do traditional in-person events. We've talked about having a virtual capacity, and I will say that, like Serena mentioned, one of the silver linings that came out of the pandemic allowed us to transition and to do some things online that we may not have taken a chance to do before. One of the things that we did actually before the pandemic that we're super grateful for is we started working with Dan at Cuseum about a year ago to launch digital membership cards. So one of the things that we had typically done is every month when we had memberships renew, we would do like a lot of associations, and we would print new cards and mail them out with all the things. So we were super grateful to have done that prior to this, because it allowed us to still get out membership cards digitally through people's Apple or Google Wallet. And so we got to transition our programming. Our cards weren't as much of an issue. And I'd like to see it as a benefit. We got to move forward in a lot of areas that we may not have otherwise.
For sure. Serena, how about on your side? How traditionally have you approached engagement with your alumni?
So there's a lot of ways, actually. One of our largest ones is our homecoming. We were actually the first university to hold a homecoming. That was back in 1909. And it's one of the biggest ones. We have our reunion party at homecoming as well. We also have local chapter events. We engage them through our alumni network mentor program. We engage them through our Legacy Link, which is a program where we send out gifts to the children of our alumni or children of the grandparents of, at birth, at age 5, 10, and 15. We do an Operation Pen and Paper, where alumni can write letters. It's a letter writing campaign where they can write letters to prospective students and their families. We have our Southwestern University ambassadors that work on a variety of programs with us as well. There's a lot that we do to engage them.
Awesome. And Jen, how about on your side? How are you engaging your alumni traditionally? Oh, we can't hear you, Jen.
Can you hear me at all?
There we go. Yep.
So we have a really robust regional program. We have about 20 cities that we've identified, which I'm sure are probably the likely candidates that most of us come up with. And we do a lot of in-person programming in those areas, sending faculty out there to speak, and then also using the expertise of our alumni community also to do some educational programming. And then we also have all the social events. So we have hoops watches that are related to basketball games. And as most people know, Duke has more of a basketball reputation than a football, but we do have that football programming as well that is becoming more of a social aspect within our alumni community. But we also have like our reunions every spring that are for the fives and for every 5-year anniversary. So yeah, we've got a wide variety of in-person programs. Some of those are alumni driven, some of them are driven by our office or colleagues across campus. And then we also have really cool programs like the Duke Engage program, where we actually get alumni participation back into community efforts. So it's not just what we can do for our alumni group, but also what the alumni can do for the greater population.
Absolutely. And Jen, staying with this, what can you talk a little bit about the programs, events, the outreach that have led historically to kind of your most active involvement in recent years with your alums?
So we have a couple of sort of specific strategic initiatives around affinity and identity programming. So we have a really robust Duke Black alumni program, DULA, which addresses our interests for our Hispanic and Latino groups. We have a group called DEMON, which is the Duke Entertainment Media and Arts Network, where we provide supports to student to alumni. And I think that's probably where the biggest growth has been in the last few years with our alumni programming, is connecting students directly to alumni for either professional development or mentorship opportunities. So that's been some of the ways that we've done more like in-person one-on-one types of engagements, which have been really, really successful. One of the biggest programs that we have is actually the alumni admissions interview process. We have about 5,000 volunteers that do all of our incoming student applicant interviews across the country. I do that myself, and I'll interview about 5 prospective students and then provide my review back to the admissions council, and those are used as part of the admissions process for students. So it's a really diverse sort of offering. What we like to think is like we come to our alums with our arms full of what they could potentially engage in, as opposed to asking them to give back exclusively. So it needs to be sort of a mutually beneficial engagement. So we look for, you know, what they're passionate about, and then and drive programming around that. We have a really great women's program. We do an in-person conference on campus that I manage that we had 700 people at the last time. And then we have a women's forum program in the regions that is that meets monthly and has its own councils and ways to engage with students in that one as well.
Awesome. Veronica, how about on your side? You know, how historically, like what kind of programs, events, outreach has kind of driven the most involvement or engagement in recent years?
So we're a relatively new university, and one of the programs that we started about 10 years ago was football. So where people had previously tailgated for basketball, they've transitioned to football, and that has brought in a huge growth in our alumni population. People are interested, they want to support their team, and it gives them something to rally around. So we've seen a lot of success there. We've also developed our chapters quite a bit from where they were. So in this past year, just alone, we've come up with some new councils surrounded in the programming of the college. So College of Engineering, College of Business, and even our Executive Masters in Business Administration program. So we've seen a lot of growth there. And what it is, I think, is that you know, people want to connect with people who are like them. The other place where we've seen a lot of our alumni willing to give back, but also a lot of our young alumni wanting to engage, is in our Career Talk Forum. So we work with our Career Center to partner and put out programming on everything from how to do a resume to how to deal with a layoff. And we've seen a lot of engagement with that. We'll also work with them to schedule in-person hours. Right now they're in-person Zoom hours to meet face-to-face with that career counselor, because they're familiar with us, and while you know, they are always welcome in the Career Center, I think they feel that their alumni space is a more comfortable space for them currently than the Career Center, which is particularly geared towards students. So we've seen a lot of development in those areas, and we're excited about that. Some of the things that we have up and coming have been because of this virtual thing. So we've just launched our virtual mentoring option, and we're hoping to see a lot with that.
That's great. And Serena, how about on your side? You know, historically, where are you seeing the most involvement, you know, from your alumni?
Again, homecoming is one that we do get a lot of people to come back for. There's different events and programs that happen during that entire weekend. And so there's a lot of involvement in some of those different particular areas of interest to them. Operation Pen and Paper is a wide draw because they do welcome in those students and families through that process. And our Alumni Network Mentor Program does draw our alumni in a lot. Every year we have a new group that we welcome in. It's particularly sophomore driven for that group. So the alumni that participate in that will present programs through them throughout the year. They'll be asked to present on a specific topic, and they'll provide information to those students in that aspect as well, at not only being matched up as a mentor to them, but they provide other content in that program that the students can benefit from as well. There's a lot of other ways that they're utilized in that program.
Great. And then just briefly, can you talk a little bit, Serena, can you talk a little bit about the relationship between alumni engagement and alumni giving at your organization?
Yeah, alumni engagement and alumni relations, we all fall under the same umbrella. So we're both housed under university relations. And so we work very cohesively with each other. We meet on a regular basis. So each branch of this department knows what the other is doing. we're involved in a lot of the same programs together. So if, one is putting this on, we kind of, what can we do to support that? So there's a lot that actually works really well together. Not completely independent of each other, but helping to enhance each other.
Definitely. And Jen, how about for you? What does that relationship between alumni engagement and alumni giving look like at Duke?
Of giving in a couple different buckets. It's the time, talent, and treasure, not just the financial giving. So we know particularly like our young alums don't necessarily have the ability to maybe make a huge financial contribution, but may be able to come back and speak in a class or something like that. So we look at it a little bit differently than I think the traditional models might, but we see a direct correlation. Those people who are engaged in programs are 3 times more likely to give, and people who participate in more than one aspect. So they are both a donor and a volunteer and an experiential participant. Their giving is also going to be higher in terms of a financial contribution.
Definitely. And Veronica, how about on your side? What's that relationship look like?
So similar to how Jen described it, obviously giving is more than just financial. Recently, the annual giving team was added directly to our team in alumni relations, which is housed interdependently in the university Department of Development and Alumni Relations, but also governed by a separate board for the UTSA Alumni Association. So we're still trying to figure out what that relationship looks like in a best case scenario, but we do a lot of the same things that Serena and Jen mentioned, in that we try and be communicative with our colleagues and collaborate with them when necessary, or which is always necessary, right? When it's to the most benefit of our constituents. One of the things that we definitely try and do too as the Alumni Association is, if we are interacting with an alum and we know that their passion is in the College of Science, and that's where they want to be giving, not to the Alumni Association, one of the things we try and do is shepherd them to those connections. We want to make sure that our ultimate goal is always to support UTSA, and if that is, to serve, the College of Science by connecting their alumni there, then that's what we want to be doing. It does get, when they have a lot of interest, it can get more complicated because all of our development officers work independently in the colleges and on our team. But like I said, we're still trying to figure out what that process looks like, but ideally we're all collaborating and we're connecting our alumni to the place where, their heartstrings are pulled and where they want to be connected to.
That's great. And Jen, a question to start us off here. Can you talk a little bit about the traditional opportunities of alumni engagement that COVID has interrupted? Like, are there further disruptions that you're anticipating or planning for, sporting events, tailgates, homecoming? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously in person has pretty much been canceled. We do actually have students that are living on campus, and Duke has been one of the more aggressive proactive parties on sort of tackling that very early on in terms of how we were going to handle students, particularly like during the athletic season. Duke was one of the forward voices in canceling games, and obviously there's a lot of drawbacks to doing that, but first and foremost, it's the safety of everybody involved. So when we looked at, programming instantly got canceled for the spring, obviously that was problematic. I think one of the things we tried to do right off the bat was figure out what could certainly be shifted to a virtual engagement and what we needed to let go and say this really only works as an in-person program. And that's obviously a hard call because a lot of times those in-person programs take just as much work as a virtual, if not more, depends on how complicated the program is. For the rest of the fall, we have only done virtual engagement. And as we look to the spring, we're already thinking, okay, well, if 50% of our programming needs to remain virtual, because we know certainly people will be apprehensive about getting back into an in-person context. And so thinking about how we can quickly shift things if we need to, how far in advance something needs to be adjusted or planned to be shifted back to an in-person program. So I think, with all of the unknowns, it's definitely adding challenges that we don't typically address. But I think the other thing is, we've said somewhat, there's a lot of benefit to having the sort of virtual environment. And I think a lot of us will have that sort of inclination to go back as soon as we can do in person and go 100% in person again. And I think what we're really finding right now is the opportunities that virtual has given us to sort of offer things that people would not have been able to participate in the past for their life cycle reasons or distance from campus or whatever those are. Time zones obviously can make a difference in what you can participate in. And I think virtual has leveled the playing field, and it's certainly changing the way we think about what programs we want to keep in person and which ones we want to keep virtual. So it's completely changing the way that we're thinking about our programming overall.
Absolutely. I definitely, I feel like that sentiment is so accurate. Everything's under the microscope, as far as effectiveness goes. Serena, can you talk a little bit about, what COVID has interrupted, where you are, and are you anticipating any further disruptions, and how are you planning for those?
Sure. So the first thing that it really affected was we were planning for our Greek reunion weekend, which was the first weekend in April. And so, as things were happening, like each week it was like, we're going to have to postpone it, or we're going to have to cancel it. And finally it was like, okay, this is really what we're facing. And so, that one was canceled. It's an every other year event. So, that one just, instead of trying to postpone, we just canceled that one. All of our local chapter groups, we contacted them and let them know that, for the time being, there wouldn't be any in-person events. And we did it across the board because really we didn't know what area to area was looking like. And so instead of saying, well, it's okay to do it here because y'all are okay, but over here you're not, we just said, this is what the university is doing. And so all local chapters just went to a virtual format at that point. Our homecoming, which was traditionally in October, got postponed to April, which was kind of, poetic in a sense because our first one was in April anyway. So we just postponed it to there. Our fall and winter competitions were postponed till spring. So those are going to be happening then. And, it affected some other things too, like our Georgetown local chapter would prepare goodie bags for all of our incoming first generation students to give them kind of some supplies and some snacks and things like that. So it's, things like that, they weren't able to gather and do. But as far as like anticipating some others, we're moving forward with plans for our spring events in the hope that they will, we just have to be hopeful that those are going to go ahead and happen. But we have, contingency plans if it needs to be a hybrid or if it needs to be completely rethought. We still have alternate plans for what will happen then. And so, we just can't stop. We just have to look at the alternatives.
Definitely. And by the way, and Veronica, I want to hear your thoughts on this too. Everyone in the chat, there are a lot of you here. So feel free to share what you're doing, what you're seeing, what your thoughts are. We'd love to hear from you. It doesn't have to just be our three panelists here. We'd love to hear what everyone else is up to and how they're thinking through these challenges. So Veronica, on your side, what has been interrupted by COVID for UTSA? What disruptions are you anticipating? And then can you talk a little bit about how you're planning for those?
Sure. I think our biggest hit was our largest scholarship fundraiser of the year, which is our annual Alumni Association Gala. At first we canceled. We are considering a virtual option now around our homecoming, which we still don't know what is going to look like. So homecoming was definitely affected, commencement, our ring ceremony, something we do around celebrating graduates that we've been trying to put in place in person. We were able to actually get it done virtually, our grad bash. And basically everything that we had programmed for the spring for our students and our young alumni that included career talks and other kinds of webinars for financial health curriculum and taxes and things like that. Most of the things we were able to, once we sort of took a beat and figured out what the plan was for the university, we were able to get a lot of that stuff done virtually. Like I said, we are still considering a virtual gala. We'll let you know how it goes. We're looking at that around homecoming, and we're looking to transition some of the things we did in person for homecoming, like our storytelling and some of the other stuff we did with our chapters, to virtual opportunities, everything from a block party to what does online tailgating look like? We are still waiting on some decisions from other entities. All of those things we partner with the university on, different divisions. So we don't know 100%, but the plan is anything that can be done virtually, and not just for the sake of being done virtually, but can be done virtually successfully, shouldn't be interrupted if we can avoid it, right? We know people, some of us are still stuck at home and they're wanting that engagement, either from their friends or their other social sources, which we are one of. So making sure that we have opportunities is important.
Definitely. So shifting gears slightly, and that actually dovetails nicely, Veronica, can you talk a little bit about how you've pivoted your engagement strategy? Have you, created new or ramped up on virtual or digital opportunities? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I will say planning virtually, while there is definitely a certain amount of time and effort that goes into it, especially on the front end when you're trying to figure things out, like we were trying to figure out everything from, do we use Zoom or do we use GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting or Google Group? I mean, there's so many options out there. We also use Teams. So what we've found that works the best is for our team stuff and for our planning, we use Microsoft Teams, where you can have a calendar, you can put shared files on there so everyone can be working on it simultaneously. And then for anything that we're hosting virtually, we're using Zoom. We just feel like for our needs, it met what we needed the best. And we felt like it was relatively intuitive. Whereas when we tried some of the other ones, we didn't have the same kind of luck based on restrictions of size or what we needed it to be able to do. So that's what we're using. So we have really liked that, and we are excited that despite COVID being terrible, that we've been able to make some shifts that we wanted to do for a while, which one was getting our programming aligned with some university partners better. So our Career Talk programming, we started shortly after I joined the university a couple of years ago. And so this has really allowed us to have more time to meet with them, to look specifically not just at the coming months, but what does our programming look like for the rest of the year? We've also been able to partner with other entities that we haven't been able to partner with before. For instance, our grad studies program. We'll be hosting a webinar series coming up soon that'll help recruit graduate students, but also teach them how to be successful. And then we've also been able to help some of our larger partners. So one of the financial health programming things that we do with one of our major partners. And they have been interested in trying some of these things and didn't have the capacity. So with us partnering and doing it together, we've been able to put a lot of our things online. We're going to try trivia soon too. That should be fun. We've heard Kahoot is a really good platform for that. And then for our gala options, for auction, obviously there are a lot of options for that. And then the thing I'm most excited about is that we've sort of tiptoed around peer-to-peer fundraising, which for those of you on the fundraising side of your organizations, I'm sure you understand how beneficial that can be. It's been on hold. A lot of it has been, based on budget or based on capacity, but with shifting things online, we have a little bit different schedules, so it allows for more time to do that research and to also put our effort into programming that would allow something like peer-to-peer to be successful. So I'm excited about that, and I'm hopeful for some of the donor engagement that it'll bring along with the rest of our planning for that.
Absolutely. Peer-to-peer seems like one of the biggest kind of buzzwords that we're hearing these days. Jen, can you talk a little bit about how you have pivoted, your engagement strategy, and where are you ramping up on kind of virtual or digital opportunities?
Yeah, I think one of the areas we realized we weren't really taking advantage of was when we did in person, that the collection of what was happening in person to then also make it available beyond the audience that was able to come live, and and really leveraging some of that content. So we did a couple of things that had sort of been in the works but didn't have that priority pressure that we'd sort of turned on pretty quickly. So we started the Lifelong Learning YouTube page for the Duke Alumni Association. And that has become not just a place for us to have all of our content that we generate, but also a place where we've done some curated playlists where we can bring conversations that have been sponsored by other parties at campus, like around COVID or around job security, things like that, and pull those all together and then share those playlists in one of our newsletters or some of our different communication tools. We had a newsletter called the Forever Learning Newsletter that went out every other month. we ramped that up. That now goes out every month and has content from across campus, obviously all going to be online. But being able to provide both that sort of asynchronous engagement opportunity where somebody may not have been available at 8 p.m. on the day we did the program, but then they can engage with it later on. The challenge we've had with that is, how do you sort of collect registration, which I think is important to everybody to know who's coming to what. And so we've been trying to figure out different ways of collecting some of that. But I think, we've been looking also at the other existing things that we had offered as opportunities for engagement for alums. So we have lots of courses on Coursera. Is there a way that we can sort of leverage that pre-existing content and then add something that's like a little extra credit for the alumni community to engage in? So live engagements or smaller cohorts. We've really been sort of looking at the difference between community building and content delivery. So those sessions that are intended to just sort of share some type of educational content, those are not intended to build community. The community building efforts are designed and created so that they have breakout rooms and ways for people to connect one-on-one. And that has really shifted the way that we think about our programming in a lot of ways. Because typically you'd have that in-person program with a reception afterward. You don't have that. And it's hard to sort of generate that in a lecture online. So just really thinking about how we can pivot the way that we think about engagement and how we can also bring people together that would never have been able to get together before because of time or distance. So yeah, I think it's just a universal shift.
Absolutely. And Serena, how about from your side?
Yeah, so kind of echoing what Jen said, a lot of it's been really great to reach out to people that normally wouldn't be able to engage, who are in areas that either they just can't get to an area, like if we have a chapter group, but they're out of that range, they can't get to a group to engage in a program, or they can't get back to homecoming every year or travel for whatever reason. So it's a way to reach a target audience that normally is not one that would have engaged. So that is a really eye-opening experience for us and how to reach that audience. It's also been great to make the connections with those people who want to be a part of, connecting on a regular basis but can't. And so they feel a connection that has been lost as well. And so I think that's something really important to remember too. It's not like us just trying to create this so that we can capture this audience and keep them, and keep our programs going and keep, moving forward, but really it's about that connection too. So, we're reaching these people who've been wanting to feel connected to their alma mater, and now we're able to. And so, keeping that in mind, that there's these ways that we're able to accomplish that, and the good feeling that comes from that is, is really important too.
Definitely. And, another question kind of along these same lines, what has been the most successful way that you've engaged alumni during COVID over the last, let's call it 5-6 months? For example, did you have a specific program or event or webinar or social media initiative that really took off? Serena, do you want to start us off there?
Sure. I would say that it seems that ones that have been put on by, I would say, some retired faculty that they've been able to connect with again has brought a great amount of participation in. I would also say we have a virtual travel program that we put on where, we were trying to ramp up an actual travel program when this kind of happened. And so we kind of had to put the brakes on that. So we sort of shifted to this virtual travel program, and we've had some retired faculty. We've had faculty who've been involved with our study abroad program who've been able to present that, and then some alumni as well. And the way that they put these together, it's not just like a slideshow of my trip to wherever. It's actually more engaging, where they're talking about the culture and even the food of the area, or different things that make it a more enriching and meaningful experience. And then even some people who have joined in on some of these, were on some of these study abroad trips with these professors. And so they might find themselves in some of these photos, or the professor might have reached out to them beforehand to ask, do you have any pictures from those trips that I can use in the program? And so they already are a part of the program before it's even presented. And so those have been, I think, some of them that it's really resonated with them, and they've tuned in for those reasons.
That's great. Jen, how about on your side? What have been the most successful ways that you've engaged your alumni over the last, call it 5 months or so? Anything specific take off?
So we did a series called Black in 2020 this summer that was with our Duke Black alumni group, as well as the African and African American Studies department at Duke. It was a 6-part series that had faculty and alumni as speakers that were just talking about what was happening in the world at over the summer. And we had 7,000 people register for that that engagement, right? So huge. And I think what was really interesting is when we start looking at the demographics of that programming, Duke until about the mid 80s was 90% white. And so when you can look at the reports after the program is over and see that the number of people who participate in the program who were before 1985, it's a different population than we might have maybe targeted that programming for initially. So those have been incredibly successful. Again, we took those when we did them live online, packaged them, and then repurposed them onto the YouTube page, and have done some additional programming around them to sort of have small salon style conversations and breakout rooms afterward, and those have been really successful. So other things that we've been looking at too that have been really great, typically when we do like a regional program someplace, it would be in Denver, and so that's mountain time. Well, when we think about what times work for our alumni, what is lunchtime in one city, on the other side of the world is after work. And so we've been thinking about how we change the way that we think about regional engagement more in a time zone atmosphere. So what works on the East Coast at lunchtime is just after work on the European continent. And so being able to sort of market programming simultaneously to 2 entities that we would never have worked with at the same time has been sort of an interesting way to think about changing up how we engage. And we've certainly seen the numbers come up as a result of that as well, because they have access to things they would not have had access to before.
Definitely. And Veronica, how about for you? Where have you seen particularly strong, takeoff with some initiatives?
So 2 things that I would say we had a lot of success with, and we haven't had success in these populations before, is our grad bash. So we have struggled to engage with new graduates since however long, like forever, it seems like, when I look back at the historical information. So our grad bash was super successful. We had sponsors, we did a DJ, it was an hour-long program in which our board got on and they said a couple things, and then we'd play some music and we'd give out a prize. And so we saw a huge engagement with that, and people sent us a lot of feedback saying it was a ton of fun, just the right length of time, just enough engagement. People got to dance and they got to play trivia, and there was prizes, and like I said, it was a way for us to showcase our sponsors and partners in addition to that. The other thing that we saw was hugely successful was our Black Roadrunner Alumni Council hosted a community conversation in light of everything that's going on. So we are a traditionally Hispanic serving institution, and while we are serving more constituents who are outside of those demographics, we have struggled to represent them with our councils and our board leadership. And so we were excited when this council came forward a little over a year ago and decided to take on an official council role and to steward and be a community for a specific sect of roadrunners who were looking for something a little different. So they hosted a community conversation. As an association, what we tried to do was make sure that it remained a safe space for their community, for roadrunners in our community who were feeling a lot of the strain of everything that was going on. So we did ask our top university leadership to not get on that conversation, just as a way to respect particularly our Black Roadrunner staff, who are involved in the chapter and who may have felt the need to say something that they didn't think would be appropriate in front of, you know, a university vice president. And so we appreciated that the leadership respected that, but we also appreciated that the council was willing to take this on and to create this safe space. And it seemed to be appreciated. There will likely be other conversations as we move forward, but we've been super pleased that there is a place where our community could go to engage, and that it was something that they felt like they needed and that they were interested in.
Great. And along those same lines, Jen, Serena, I've got a question kind of around, obviously, you know, given the events that the world has seen over the last few months. I know that you've launched some anti-racism focused digital programming for your alums. Can you talk a little bit about that? Serena, can you start us off?
Sure. So one of the things that we have is a book club. And because of that, we were able to move pretty quickly. We developed a series called Let's Talk About It. And it's meant to engage community members in conversations regarding a particular social theme. The first one was based on racial justice and inequity. And what we did was we had a panel-led discussion over 3 books. We've gone through one, the next one is coming up September 15th, and then we'll have the 3rd one in October. And so we had 6 book choices that we let our audience choose from. And we put it out, they get to choose the titles, and then we will have the series of 3, which they'll read the book, and then we'll have a discussion on it with the panel. Those panel members are from our staff, faculty, and alumni. And so they all have some background that allow us to engage in a way that is meaningful to the conversation. So they have some background in the racial inequity cause, or in one instance, they were a member of our psychology department, or excuse me, in our health department, but they were psychologists who had a focus in the racial inequity area. So they're good choices for the panel to be in that discussion. And so the panelists will vary from book to book. And so that is a program that is going to continue. So we'll have one in the fall and one in the spring, and they'll focus on different topics. For instance, future ones might be focused on LGBTQIA rights, on immigration, on the environment, sustainability, or climate justice, on hunger and food insecurity, housing inequity as well. So there's different topics that we'll cover, but that came out of the need to address what was happening in our nation right now. And we have other departments that are collaborating on additional programming as well that will involve their departments and some student organization input and things like that. So there's other programs that have yet to be announced as
well. Awesome, thank you. And Jen, how about for you?
Yes, I mentioned we did the Black in 2020 series earlier this year. The Duke campus community did a program called Living While Black, and we were able to take that content and then share it, repackage it, and share it with the alumni community. I think the other thing we're really thinking about, though, in these conversations around anti-racism is not just to do programs specifically on anti-racism thoughts and themes, but to really be more integrative in our approach overall. So when we do a conversation on professional development with like a leadership theme, the questions going back to the speaker include things like, how is your organization fighting racism internally? What are the sort of systematic issues within your organization that you can address, so that it's not any one program or any one series, but it is an integrative approach across everything that we do. Actually, I was just sort of chuckling to myself this morning. I was at one of the student groups that posted a panel discussion on venture capital that they're going to be hosting, and it had 6 white men as the speakers. And the students jumped in to say, hey, what about representation from other communities? So I think we are starting to see a lot more awareness across the board, and some of that fight to sort of create a more equal playing field and celebrate and foreground those voices is going to happen naturally. But, you know, I'm also looking at the new Black faculty at Duke that we can highlight in some of our existing programs, and not going back to the same people over and over again, but making sure that when somebody says, hey, I would really like to have a speaker that can talk about the subject, that I am just as familiar with the excellence on the faculty of color as I am on any of the other faculty members, so that I can make sure that when we need to have those resources available, we're aware of what everybody is available to do.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have one more question, then I want to get to some of these Q&A. There's some great questions in there. Let's talk, we never really talk about failures. We're like, oh, I've done all these great things. Where have you totally whiffed? What did not work? What was not successful? And what did you learn? Veronica, you want to start us off?
Sure. So one of the things we've struggled with, and I'm not sure if it's a state institution thing or a higher education thing, but our ability to move quickly has hindered us. In the days following us starting to work from home, and I'm talking like we went home on a Wednesday and Friday, an email was already scheduled to go out about a gift planning option. So unfortunately, our inability to move quickly enough wasn't able to stop this email in time. We did receive some negative feedback on that, and we understood. I mean, it was an inappropriate time to be requesting a gift. Like I said, it wasn't necessarily that that was planned. It was just our inability to be able to move as quickly as we should for times of crisis. So the great thing that came out of that is that now, you know, some of our leadership got involved and they understood a little bit more about the process, and we've been able to shorten that time frame to about 2 weeks. So that was really excellent. But it's, you know, it's a learning opportunity. It's, you know, how important is a priority when a crisis is happening. So to learn better to prioritize things and to get them either stopped or moving. And I would say one of the other things that we tried is, you know, when you're learning, things happen. And so we attempted to do a partner event that we actually had really high hopes for and thought was going to go really great. It was going to have, you know, people's pets in it. But because of how the programming was presented, we weren't able to do that way. And we just saw it sort of fall off. So whereas everyone was interested to get on their Zoom and, you know, show off their new puppy, it didn't end up panning out that way. And we did have to have conversations about making sure that we understood the technology more, the capacity, and that when we're having conversations with our partners that they understand, you know, sort of what the expectation is. So just a couple little things, but again, they're one of those things where if we didn't try, we wouldn't know. If we hadn't fallen down, we wouldn't know, you know, what to do when we got back up. So it's never a bad thing to fail forward. Try stuff, be brave. You know, just make sure you have thick skin for when you're dealing with those failures, and that you're not just looking at it as a way that you failed, but as a way to make corrections to move forward in the future.
Definitely. Serena, how about for you? Where have you kind of missed the mark?
Well, so early on in April, we planned a week of caring, and it was a social media event, I guess. And so each day was dedicated to a different thing. So it was faculty, alumni, students, I don't even remember now. So each day was different. I'm a person who, my blood type is B positive, and that's what I live by, right? So I'm B positive. We did a lot of collaborating with different areas. There were different things that were planned throughout the day, and it was all going to be up on social media. And so I tracked, you know, likes, shares, clicks, engagement, all of that, which was impressive. It was great. But there was a call to action for each day. And the call to action was like, you know, share your family photo or share, you know, something on each day that had to go along with the event for the day. And the call to actions just sort of went, you know, there was not a lot of participation in that. And so I think in retrospect, if we had given a little bit more information about exactly what we wanted from them on the week of caring, that might have given them some time to prepare for that. But I I think we kind of held back because we didn't want to give too much away. You know, it was sort of, you know, it was like the week of caring coming up, and, you know, this will be, you know, we're highlighting families and we're highlighting faculty, but we didn't give away too many details. And so I think, you know, in retrospect, maybe less is not necessarily the way to get them to participate in that. But it was really great because we had, you know, students would make a video that we would post that showed them, you know, how they could do something with the things they had around home. And we had another student do a workout video that showed them how to stay in shape at home, you know, different things like that. So it was great intentions, but the actual call to action part just didn't have the movement on it. So there were some lessons there about maybe, you know, sharing a little bit more about what we wanted from that call to action. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And Jen, how about on your side? Where have things not gone according to plan?
I would say, you know, in our efforts sometimes to get as much communication out as we possibly can, the risk of being annoying in your communication with email has certainly been a challenge as everything has become more digital. And I think the other thing is sometimes we abandon strategy in an effort to see that opportunity. And so like you look at something virtual and go, oh, we'll just make this available to everyone. And so instead of an email going to 10,000 people, it now goes to 180,000 people, and they're getting an email from a different entity, you know, and they get to the point where they hit that unsubscribe. And, you know, as that's a failure on such a huge magnitude, because then you don't get those people back and you've lost them, you know, for good. So thinking about our engagement and our email strategies around how we're going to go about sharing some of this stuff. So for example, like the series that I mentioned earlier, instead of doing 4 or 5 individual registrations, we did it as a series. And even though we didn't have the information for the latter part of the series yet, we had people sort of save the date and they could register for it up front. And then as the information became available, we only sent it to the people who had already expressed interest. So I think that's certainly one area that we've been working pretty steadily on since March, on how to make sure that over communicate and become the annoying fly in the room.
For sure, for sure. All right, let's get to a few of these Q&A questions. Before I jump into these, we've got about 8 minutes left, so stick around. We also want to know if this was helpful, if you're enjoying this. If you have to jump off early, let us know, but would love to hear what subjects you want us to cover. We're gonna do this again in a couple weeks. We want to know what topics you want to cover, so you can throw those into the chat, or you can always email us. All right, so let's get to these questions. So first of all, what platforms or tools are you using for career collaborations, for mentorship, and professional and network connections? Panelists, I'm not going to put any of you on the spot, so I'm just going to let any of you jump in whenever you like.
Sure. So we just launched People Growth. It is a very comprehensive platform. It's also pretty pricey. Had it been solely our decision, I might have gone with something like Graduate, which seems more nimble. But there are really great platforms out there. Those are 2 that I would recommend. It depends on your budget and also your target and your partners in the university. But those are 2 really great ones.
We use People Growth as well and have been really happy with it.
Cool. All right, so the next question, do you have recommendations on creative ways to engage alumni, particularly alumni groups like band alumni that have events normally tied to in-person events such as athletic games?
So we've been looking along those lines of like the trivia, the cultural types of things. We have not done this yet, but I understand it's in the works for sometime later this fall. It would be like a virtual band jam where everybody submits like them playing a specific part of a song, and then they're going to compose that all together and then share it out more broadly. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge when everybody's used to the in-person. And with Zoom, you can't have 2 people speaking at the same time. So there's no choral, participation in that way, but there are some platforms that allow for that. So, so maybe that's an opportunity to find a different, other than Zoom, type of engagement tool that may allow you to do that. The other thing you can look at, and we have done, is looking at the sort of history of an organization. And instead of doing the get together that's more social, you start to look at the history of that particular group. Like we have a long-standing student musical theater group. So can we go back to 80 years and pull people together who can talk about their hoof and horn experience when they were students? So it's just shifting the focus of the program.
Definitely. So the next question we've got is, other than Zoom gatherings, what are you doing for virtual events that alums have been interested in? What platforms are you using?
So we've used LinkedIn Live, and it's been particularly successful at our business school. They do a standard standing noon time, I think it's on Wednesdays, faculty conversation about whoever was available to speak on that day. They have been incredibly popular, and because they are predictable, people have been tuning in and they can watch later if they want to. But LinkedIn has certainly been a good tool for us, particularly on that more professional track of programming.
Definitely.
So oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Serena.
We use Ring Central. It's a Zoom platform, but it has like some, I think, extra security for our campus. But that's how ours is formatted.
We also use Zoom. We've also, though, when we've done larger scale events with our university partners, for instance, we recently did a series called Food for Thought, which in San Antonio was great because we got to talk about things like tacos and cool local restaurants. And we also, the library holds a university Hispanic heritage cookbook that they're actually putting online for PDF download right now. But we use WebEx and then also YouTube Live to stream, because you're still maxed out at a capacity, but you want people to be able to watch it. So we've seen some success with that.
For sure.
I just want to add to that real quick, Dan. I think the other thing too is to think about what group you're trying to target. So if I'm trying to target my golden years folks, I'm not doing it on Instagram, right? You've got to match the platform to the audience you're trying to engage. And that has to be sort of thought of well in advance.
Definitely. So I have one last big question for our panelists. What is one big takeaway that you'd want each person watching to be able to bring back to their respective organizations? Serena, why don't you start us off?
Okay, I would say don't limit yourself to your talent or your audience. Like I said earlier, we have current and retired faculty, staff, alumni, and our corporate partners have presented for us. And our virtual engagement opportunities are open not only to our alumni, we open it up to our staff, our parents, students, and our SU community as a whole. Also do a deep scrub of your alumni base and find hidden gems in there. Don't just rely on to those names that kind of rise to the top all the time. We find some really good talent when we kind of dig a little deeper and see what's in there. Sometimes you'll find that you have a connection somewhere that you had no idea that this person did this job, and it could make for a really great webinar. That's how we've been able to put some of these things together. That would be my takeaway. And
absolutely.
I'll put my contact information in the chat if anybody wants to talk about programming. That's one of the silver linings that I've had is connecting with other people in our profession and brainstorming ideas together.
That's awesome. Yeah, anyone who wants to chat, feel free to throw your email in there. Jen, how about on your side? What's a big piece of advice or takeaway you'd provide?
I'd say most of us in person was probably our bread and butter. And this has certainly been a shift for all of us to shift everything to a virtual platform. And I think there have been a lot of gains for most organizations on shifting to that sort of virtual type of engagement. And so I think what's important is at the end of the year, when we ever get back to the point of where we do have in-person programming, look at what those aspects of the virtual programming offered your community, things that you can build on strategically, and figure out how you can weave those in to your existing programming. Because I think right now what everybody's sort of doing is in-person was up here and virtual is way down here, and right now we're doing the reverse. And I think we're all itching to go back to here. And I think it really needs to be a little bit more like this. And so how do you identify what really you were able to capitalize on in that virtual aspect so that you can continue that? So all the traction that you've gained in the last months, however long this goes, you don't lose because we go back to sort of our more traditional thought processes and engagement practices.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Veronica, take us home.
Sure. I would say be strategic. I love to go 100 miles an hour, but it's been great to have some more time to really think about what our end goals are, what our target populations are, and how this fits into the university mission. So as someone who does not like to strategize and make out long plans, I have found that that is incredibly important so that at the end of the day, the end of the year, the end of 10 years, you are at the place where you want to be. And the other thing I would say is really talk to your team and figure out what people's strengths are. With some of our stuff being limited, some of our team members have been able to take on additional tasks that have really helped. So yeah, be strategic, play to the strengths of your team, and don't be afraid to try stuff. It's not all going to work out, but it's worth it.
For sure. Sage advice. Well, that's going to be the end of our webinar. I want to thank all of our panelists for being here. This is our first Alumni Hour webinar that we've ever done. So let us know what your thoughts were. We're planning to do this again. We want to do these roughly every few weeks or so. So we're going to have another one in the works for mid-September. If you've got any feedback for today, please feel free to share it. You can email me, dan@qzm.com. I'll put that here in the chat as well. And then you can also email us, hello@qzm.com, with your ideas, suggestions on topics that you want us to cover. And as always, everyone have a safe, healthy week. We look forward to seeing you again on our next Alumni Hour. And thanks again for being here. Take care. Stay safe.